Ready to explore some intense spirituality. We're diving deep into the dark night of the soul.
Ooh, yeah, St. John of the Cross, 16th century Spanish mystic. That's some powerful stuff.
Not just a poem, though, right? It's more like I don't know, a guidebook for the soul.
Definitely a guidebook. It's like he's mapping out the spiritual journey,
Yeah.
all the ups and downs of getting closer to God.
So like a spiritual GPS.
Exactly.
So this isn't just for like monks in monasteries. Anyone can relate to this.
Oh, absolutely. He starts by talking about these imperfections of beginners, and, get this, he uses the 7 deadly sins to categorize them.
Uh-oh, I'm already feeling called out.
Well, he's not being judgmental or anything. It's more like we're all kind of like spiritual toddlers, in the beginning at least.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. But still, the 7 deadly sins, like pride, for example, how does that fit in?
He talks about how pride can show up as, well, boasting about your spiritual experiences or looking down on people who aren't as, quote unquote, devout.
Yeah, okay. I've definitely been there. Like, oh, you haven't reached my level of enlightenment.
It's that whole wanting to feel superior, more advanced on the spiritual path.
Ouch. What about greed? Does he talk about that one?
He calls it avarice. And it's basically craving spiritual books or trinkets, always wanting more, never content.
Like a spiritual shopaholic,
Hmm.
always needing the next fix.
Exactly. And then there's luxury, like getting distracted during prayer or forming friendships based on, I don't know, superficial stuff rather than genuine spiritual connection.
Oh man, it's so easy to get caught up in the social side of spirituality, isn't it? Like who's meditating the longest or whatever.
He's got something to say about wrath, too, which I think we can all relate to. He's talking about getting angry when your, spiritual highs fade,
Yeah.
or being all judgmental about other people's sins.
Yeah, I've been there. Like, why isn't my meditation working anymore? And look at that guy over there. He's doing it all wrong.
Haha, exactly. And then there's gluttony. Obsessing over those spiritual highs, always wanting more, pushing for frequent communion or abandoning practices if they don't give you instant gratification.
It's like we want the spiritual sugar rush all the time.
And let's not forget envy. He describes it as feeling resentful toward people who seem to be making more progress than you.
Ugh, yeah. I hate that I do that, but it's so hard not to compare sometimes.
Right. And finally, we've got sloth, maybe the most relatable of them all. Avoiding those difficult spiritual practices, always looking for the easy way out.
When really spiritual growth takes, well, effort. So he really covers it all, doesn't he? It's kind of depressing, though, focusing so much on our flaws.
Well, he's setting the stage.
Yeah.
Recognizing our imperfections, our childish tendencies, it's the first step, towards overcoming them.
We can be ready for the dark night of the soul.
Exactly. It's all about maturing in our faith.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but terrified. So let's talk about this dark night of sense. This is like the first stage of spiritual purification, right?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Think of it as like a period of dryness, disillusionment. Those spiritual highs, the comforting feelings you might have had in the beginning, they start to fade.
So it's like when your spiritual practices feel empty. You're like, am I doing something wrong?
Yeah, exactly. It can be really disorienting, a little scary even,
Mm.
but it's actually crucial for growth.
Okay, I'm trying to stay open-minded here.
Yeah.
But how is feeling lost and confused good for anything?
It's like God saying, all right, you had the milk, time for some solid food.
Okay, I love that.
He's weaning us off those easy comforts, pushing us towards a deeper relationship with him.
So it's not punishment.
No, it's purification. It's about refining your faith,
Yeah.
deepening your trust.
But how does that actually play out? What does this dark night of sense look like in real life? So, okay, say I'm in this dark night of sense, feeling lost, confused. What am I supposed to do? Just like sit around and wait for it to be over?
It's not really about waiting. It's more about surrendering,
Surrendering.
Yeah, like remember, this whole night is about moving beyond feelings. Like we got to anchor ourselves in something deeper.
So like even when prayer feels, I don't know, dry,
Hmm.
meaningless,
Yeah.
we got to keep showing up.
Exactly. He talks about how important faith is, even when you feel like, God is distant.
That's so hard.
Think about it like this. You're walking through a dark tunnel, right? Can't see the end. But you trust that there's light on the other side.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Oh.
But how do we cultivate that kind of trust when it feels like you're surrounded by, darkness?
He talks about leaning into it, the darkness. Don't resist it.
Lean in.
Think about it. Think about times in your life when you had to give up something you loved, right, for something better.
Yeah, like a bad habit.
Or a relationship that wasn't working. It's painful at first, but it leads to growth.
Uh-huh.
Eventually.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So
Yeah.
it's like God's pruning away the parts of us that are holding us back.
Exactly. It's not to punish us. It's to, purify.
So how do we know if we're actually in a dark night of the soul or just, I don't know, going through a rough patch? We all have moments of doubt, right?
That's a good question. And honestly, only you can answer that. But you got to think about the intensity, how long it's lasting. Is it just a fleeting feeling or is it a real shift, like in your whole spiritual landscape?
So not just a bad day, more like, I don't know, lost in the spiritual wilderness.
Exactly. It's like the ground beneath you has shifted. You don't know where to stand. Your usual spiritual practices, they feel empty. You might even question if God exists at all.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty intense. So what do I do?
First thing, don't panic. It's not a sign you're failing or anything. Remember, a lot of great saints, mystics, they went through this.
Hmm.
And their faith, it only got stronger.
So it's not a dead end, more like a turning point.
Precisely. It's a chance for real transformation. But this is also the time when you really need guidance.
Tridents.
Yeah, like St. John of the Cross, he really emphasizes having a spiritual director, someone to help you through it.
Like a Sherpa for the soul.
Haha, yeah, exactly. They can offer encouragement, challenge you when you need it, help you figure out if this is really a dark night or something else.
So we're not supposed to do this alone.
He's really cautious about relying on just ourselves, especially when you're feeling, vulnerable. It's like trying to get out of a maze in the dark. Way easier with someone who has a map, right?
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got faith, surrender, guidance. Anything else we should remember?
Patience. These nights, they don't end quickly. Spiritual growth, it takes time.
So it's like planting a seed.
Yeah, you can't rush it. It needs time, nourishment, the right conditions.
So trust the process, even when I don't see the, results.
God doesn't work on our timeline, right? He's got his own perfect timing.
All right, so while we're waiting, what should we focus on?
Cultivating those virtues that will help you through it. Humility, detachment, perseverance.
So even though it's difficult, this dark night of sense is not, I don't know, pointless.
Definitely not. It's got a purpose. And it's not the end. St. John of the Cross actually talks about another night, an even deeper one. He calls it the dark night of the spirit.
Oh, boy. We're going there.
We'll save that for next time. But first, I want to make sure I'm getting this right. It's not about, seeking out pain, right?
Yeah, I was wondering about that, too. Like, we're not supposed to just enjoy suffering, are we?
No, it's not about suffering for its own sake. But sometimes suffering is just, unavoidable. On the path to spiritual growth. It's like training for a marathon.
Yeah, you got to push through pain to get to the finish line.
He sees suffering as a crucible, burns away the impurities and brings you closer to God. Not about seeking it out, but about finding the meaning in it.
Okay, this is making a lot more sense now, I think. But I might need a minute to process this. Dark Night of the Soul stuff is pretty heavy. All right, Dark Night of the Spirit, bring it on. I think I'm ready.
You said it was even more intense than the Dark Night of Sense.
Right, that's what you said.
Hmm.
So lay it on me. What are we dealing with here?
Okay, so if the Dark Night of Sense is about, purifying our desires and attachments, this one goes deeper, like to the core of our being.
So what does that even look like?
Well, imagine feeling totally abandoned by God, just lost, no sense of direction.
Wait, even worse than the Dark Night of Sense? I thought we already hit rock bottom.
This one, it takes you deeper than you ever thought possible. It's like everything you thought you knew about God, yourself, even reality, it's all stripped away.
I'm starting to get why he calls it a dark night. This is kind of freaking me out.
It can be pretty scary, yeah. But here's the thing. Even in that darkness, God's still there.
But how? If I can't feel him, how do I even know?
He's working in ways we can't always understand. He's not abandoning you. He's drawing you closer, but in a way that, well, it's beyond our human understanding.
This is a lot to take in. How do we even, I don't know, how do we keep believing when it feels like everything's falling apart?
Remember that analogy, the child learning to walk? Yeah.
It's playful, right? They fall down, they get frustrated,
Yeah.
but they have to go through that to learn.
So the Dark Night of the Spirit is like that.
It's about letting go of all those false supports, all those illusions, that we can do it on our own. So we can learn to lean on God completely.
So it's not about trying to fix it. It's about surrendering, even when it feels terrifying.
Exactly. It's about radical trust, even when you're surrounded by darkness.
Okay, but why? What's the point of all this? If God loves us, why would he let us go through something so painful?
Think of it as a refining fire, you know. Burns away all the impurities and what's left, pure gold.
So it's not punishment, it's purification.
He's not trying to break you. He's trying to mold you into something beautiful, into the image of Christ.
Okay, I can see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel now.
That's the key. This isn't the end. It's a passage to something much greater.
So what happens after this night? What's it like to, I don't know, come out of it? Well, it's not like a light switch, you know? Everything's not suddenly bright and happy. The effects, they linger, they shape you.
So we're not just back to where we started.
Think of a caterpillar, right? When it goes through metamorphosis, it's not just a caterpillar again, it's a butterfly.
Wow, okay. That's beautiful. So what's it like then? What does a soul look like after the dark night of the soul?
St. John of the Cross talks about humility,
Yeah.
real humility, detachment from all the, worldly stuff, and a purity of intention.
So it's like nothing else matters but God.
He also talks about incredible strength, like, you've weathered the storm. You're stronger now.
Battle tested.
Exactly. And probably most important, you experience this profound union with God.
Like you've finally reached your destination. But I don't even know if I don't know if I've gotten there.
That's a question for the ages, right? Only you can answer that. But St. John of the Cross, he says a soul in union, they experience this peace, this joy, and it's beyond anything we can imagine.
So it's not about escaping the challenges. It's about facing them with like this newfound strength.
And hope. He talks about a heightened awareness of God. You see him everywhere.
Like the world is just, I don't know, glowing with his presence.
And it's not just an idea, it's real. You feel it in your heart.
Sounds pretty amazing.
It is. And it might seem impossible, like something only saints can achieve. But he says it's there for anyone who seeks it with their whole heart.
So the dark night of the soul, it's not the end. It's the beginning of something incredible.
It's a journey. It takes courage, surrender, and faith. A lot of faith.
Well, we've been through a lot today. Explored the depths of the dark night, understood its purpose, even glimpsed, what's waiting for us on the other side.
I hope you're walking away with a deeper appreciation for all this.
And maybe a little inspiration to embrace the darkness, even when it's scary, because it might just lead you, well, somewhere amazing. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the dark night of the soul. See you next time.